You cannot enter here, said Gandalf, and the huge shadow halted. Go back to the abyss prepared for you. Go back. Fall into the nothingness that awaits you and your master. Go. The Black Rider flung back his hood, and behold, he had a kingly crown, and yet upon no head visible was it set. From a mouth unseen there came a deadly laughter. Old fool, he said, old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it? Die now and curse in vain. And with that he lifted his high sword, and flames ran down the blade.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. This week we're reading Book 5, Chapter 4, The Siege of Gondor. My name is Logan.
And my name is Zach.
There's a lot of things happening in this chapter, which makes it extremely long.
Yes.
You know, Gandalf sort of like steps into his like commander role here.
Oh, big time. General Gandalf, yeah.
Which is pretty exciting. And I think it's really effective because it's juxtaposed with Denethor's sort of like total failure and abnegation of his role as leader.
Big time.
And so it really works. And those parts where, you know, Denethor is like in despair are truly devastating. He's not only failing his city, he's also failed his son.
Yeah.
And his, you know, responsibility to his son as a father.
Yeah.
And like he's kind of the father of the city also.
Right.
And then Pippin is just kind of caught in the middle of it, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this chapter.
Me too. I mean, what a contrast between the Muster of Rohan and this chapter.
Yeah.
I mean, we started last episode by just kind of talking smack about how boring that chapter was.
Yeah.
I mean, we asked for exciting and we got exciting in this chapter. Though it is so long, we're going to have to like kind of yada yada some things and just kind of get moving. This chapter, I think, is the most like active description of battle that we get in the entire book, except for maybe the Battle of Pelennor Fields.
Yeah, I think that's true.
There's some really exhilarating descriptions of battle, but also some truly horrifying scenes. You know, the catapulting of severed heads over the walls. I mean, that's the most rated R content that we get in the entire book, I think.
I had forgotten about that. So when it came up in this reading, it was really affecting and how horrified the kind of populace is. They're like literally raining fire and death, you know, onto the streets of Minas Tirith.
And people recognize the faces of people that they knew. I mean, that's truly terrifying. There's also some like interesting like philosophical points about war that Tolkien is making. He sort of waxes poetic about how the oldest and most effective weapon in war is hunger, but then switches to saying after the catapulting of the heads that actually the most effective and fastest weapon is despair.
Yeah, it's interesting because you kind of imagine Minas Tirith as a place that could withstand a siege for what, like months? But maybe the thing about hunger is that it brings despair faster. When you introduce those, you know, severed heads of people who you recognize, it just makes it that much worse. And I suppose the kind of manifestation of that in this chapter is Denethor.
Mm.
You know, it's his despair that really puts them at risk in a way that Gandalf has to stand against or kind of muster the hope of the people.
Kindle hope in them.
Which is kind of why he's like everywhere, right? He's just never stops going from place to place.
Going past the safety of the gates and pushing the Nazgul away, joining a sortie to go out and rescue Faramir and the rest of the retreat that becomes a rout.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, he's just constantly going out on the front lines in a way that's
right.
really interesting. the word that you used a minute ago is abdicate. And it's so interesting that Denethor has cast himself as the last line of defense, the only one who pays a cost against the enemy in all of Middle-earth. He talks about how Gondor is his charge and Gondor is his responsibility. It's like his sacred duty to protect Gondor and to think of the needs of Gondor ahead of the needs of the rest of Middle-earth, while also puffing himself up as the most important leader in all of Middle-earth.
Yeah.
And then when the moment comes to do this thing, to protect his people, he withdraws. And he says, follow who you will. You're just going to burn and die. Might as well die now.
Yeah.
And there's something so dark about this murder-suicide where he's not just choosing to kill himself, he's choosing to kill his son.
Yeah.
And it's wrapped up in guilt and shame. And, he feels remorse for the way that he wished that Faramir had died and the fact that he sent him off to his death.
Right.
And that turns into this like self-injurious behavior that also is, he's not just like setting up for Faramir to die alongside him. He's setting up for the entire city to burn with him by abdicating in this way.
Yeah. There's something really Tolkienian about it, where I think that the people that are the most capable in these kind of circumstances are people who have humility and then step up into leadership. Whereas like people who like think really highly of themselves kind of waver in the face of, it's like they're not really standing on like a solid foundation or something. But Denethor, as a person who thinks so much of himself, kind of can't help but fail because it's not really like based in that humility that I think Tolkien really values.
Talking about humility, I was going to point out earlier too that Denethor loves to say the words, I already knew that.
Yeah, because he's got the Palantir, right? Like he thinks that
he loves pointing out that the information he's just been given, he already knew.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And we all know people like that. People just can't be told anything because they already know it. There's a lack of humility there.
Well, should we jump into the action?
Let's do it. We start with Pippin being woken up by Gandalf. And Gandalf tells him, you are summoned to the Lord of the city to learn your new duties. And what's Pippin's response?
Are we going to eat breakfast first or?
Yeah. Will victuals be provided?
So hobbit.
Oh, so hobbity. So he's given us a small loaf of bread and what he thinks to be a very inadequate pat of butter and a cup of thin milk. And this is like what finally like deflates him. He's like, why did you bring me here?
Yeah, a meager breakfast is the worst thing that Pippin could imagine.
That's what pierces his heart. That's what deflates him most. Gandalf's like, you know quite well to keep you out of mischief. And if you do not like being here, you can remember that you brought it on yourself.
And then we've talked about Denethor's failings here already for a little bit, but then Tolkien describes him as an old patient spider.
Yeah.
Which really gives you the, full kind of opinion of how Tolkien is like presenting this guy.
Tolkien calls someone a spider. That's not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
I have in my notes here Denethor's reconnaissance, because when he greets Pippin, he says, well, Master Peregrine, I hope that you used yesterday to your profit and to your liking, though I fear the board is barer in this city than you could wish. So it's almost like he's like heard Pippin's conversation in the morning with Gandalf, complaining about breakfast.
Is he spending his time kind of spying on everybody all the time?
I think that's the implication.
It's really gross. Like for somebody in his position to be prying into like a private conversation like that.
Yeah.
When the fate of the world is like outside your door.
Yeah. Yeah. And it says Pippin had an uncomfortable feeling that most of what he had said or done was somehow known to the Lord of the City, and much was guessed of what he thought as well. So there's a sense that he's like getting reports back, but also, he has this like spiritual capability, this insight into other people's thoughts, but it seems like he's also using the Palantir for this purpose, which is, just a deeply strange thing. We don't get the tomato bursting scene that we get in the movies.
Yeah.
But we do get part of their exchange, which is, can you sing? So he's asking him like, hey, what good are you, essentially?
Right.
He's like, can you sing? So that shows how little he thinks of Pippin as well.
Yeah. That's in such contrast to Theoden, who really is like reveling in the opportunity to talk to Merry about
Absolutely.
the Shire and about his people and their traditions.
That's a great point.
And
That's a great point.
yeah, they're such different characters.
Pippin says like, basically like none of my songs are like worthy of this place. Like, the worst thing that we sing about is bad weather.
Yeah.
And he's, kind of like, all right, I really don't want to like, debase myself like this in front of this Lord. There's like a condescension. Pippin feels inadequate and he kind of like leans into that and he goes, and why should such songs be unfit for my halls or for such hours as these? We who have lived long under the shadow may surely listen to echoes from a land untroubled by it. Then we may feel that our vigil was not fruitless, though it may have been thankless.
We've kind of been told throughout this book and the last book that there are no lands that are untroubled by everything that's going on. It's not just Minas Tirith that's dealing with, Sauron.
Right.
And Sauron is not the only force of evil in the world. And so he's so myopic, Denethor is.
That's a great word to describe it.
It's just his little problems or whatever, big problems.
Big
right?
problems, but
they're
still.
big problems. The big problems become like they get reduced in his like spirit to just be his own little worry stones that he has to worry about, and nobody else has anything as, difficult as he does.
Yeah, he has that like martyr complex before he actually tries to become a martyr. What did he say a couple chapters ago? That darkness is overshadowed by my own darkness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he just doesn't have a proper perspective. So Pippin is witness to Denethor's diplomacy. He finally has the conversations with Gandalf that Gandalf has basically been begging him to have for 2 days. But Pippin is surprised. It says he marvels at the amount that the Lord seemed to know about a people that live far away, even though definitely been a long time since he'd ever traveled abroad. And of course, this again just shows like how well informed Denethor is, both from his like network of spies, but also from looking into the Palantir.
Right.
Pippin's given a break, but he's told to go and get clad in, the garb of a servant of the steward. So he's given some sick gear, but they let him keep his gray cloak, which I think is really cool.
That is cool. It says, already it seemed years to Pippin since he had sat there before in some half-forgotten time when he had still been a hobbit.
Yeah. Wow.
Now he was one small soldier in a city preparing for a great assault. So
yeah, totally.
Something about his hobbitness is kind of not up to the enormity of the situation.
Yeah.
Although, of course, it is, right? Like,
yeah.
The thing about hobbits is they are up to the task, but he doesn't feel that way. And he doesn't even feel like he's a hobbit anymore. He just feels like he's like swept up in this thing.
Yeah. What a sad statement, huh?
Yeah.
I think we can compare that to when Merry is like seeing the mountains.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man, at another time I may have been like really happy to see these, but now all I want to do is just be like closed up in
a hobbit hole.
Yeah, a hobbit hole in front of a fire. He's like, this is like the immeasurable weight of Middle Earth was bearing down on him, like the magnitude of it. Pippin is wearing this like knightly garb, and he's smaller than a 10-year-old child of Minas Tirith, and he just feels so inadequate. I love that it says Pippin might have been pleased with his new array at another time and place, but he knew now that he was taking part in no play. He was in deadly earnest, the servant of a grim master in the greatest peril.
Yeah. We get to hear from Baragond again, which...
Yeah, his buddy Baragond.
I really love, and, he just sighs, and Baragond is like got high emotional intelligence because he's like, are you weary of this day?
Yeah.
And it's still kind of early in the day. It's like 11 o'clock or something. Yeah. The 11th hour.
He's like, hey, you've never done an honest day's work before, have you?
Which he kind of hasn't, right? Like,
No.
he's like a hobbit prince,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Pippin's like, yeah, I am. And then there's these horrible clouds that are coming from Mordor.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, does this happen like all the time when like the wind comes from the east? And Baragon's like, no, this is no weather of the world. This is some device of his malice, some broil of fume from the mountain of fire that he sends to darken hearts and counsel. As we're talking about Baragon, it just occurs to me that when Pippin and Gandalf like arrive in the city, that chapter, Minas Tirith, we kind of yada-yada'd like 90% of his like Baragon and Beargill conversations.
Yeah,
because we were like,
that's true.
Like, all right, let's like skip forward. But Baragon's about to play like a really important role in this story. And if we hadn't had that moment of like emotional connection with Baragon, it's kind of similar to Hama, right? Like where back in the Rohirrim chapters, we're kind of like, all right, like why do we need to know about this guy?
Yeah.
Like we already have so many characters, but it makes his loss so much more felt.
Yeah, it does.
And so, Baragon's bravery, his courage to defy orders that's about to happen. It's the ground is laid for that to have like a real payoff.
Yeah.
Once again, I take back any negative thing that I ever said about Tolkien.
Yeah, Tolkien always gives us what we need to, enjoy the story, I think.
So Pippin and Baragon are kind of peering out over the Pelennor, and as they're looking out, suddenly there's a piercing cry, and it says, "It was the same that he had heard long ago in the Marish of the Shire, but now it was grown in power and hatred, piercing the heart with a poisonous despair. And they see 5 bird-like forms, horrible as carrion fowl, yet greater than eagles, cruel as death. And they are swooping down on these dark figures that they realize are men that are sprinting towards the city."
Well, they hear a trumpet ending in a long high note, and Baragon immediately recognizes it as Faramir's call.
That's right. This is definitely an example of a Greek chorus description that I think you've pointed out really effectively every time we see it. These aren't people who are in the midst of the action. These are people who are relating something that's happening far away. It's got like a kind of like a hark, they come hither. It's got like almost like a stage monologue.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, this isn't like how people talk. Like Pippin can see these things. Like Baragon doesn't need to describe it to Pippin.
Yeah.
Like he's telling us this,
Yeah, right. That's a good point. But look, they hold on. They will make the gate. No, the horses are running mad. Look. Yeah, it really does come across that way.
Look, the men are thrown. So they're like thrown off their horses by the terror of these fell beasts. And they say, they're running on foot. No, one is still up, but he rides back to the others. That will be the captain. He can master both beasts and men. And, they just start crying, help, help. Who can help him? Faramir, Faramir. And that's when Gandalf leaves the city for the first time. He's going to do this several times in this chapter. He leaves the safety of the city, raises his staff, and like uses his light to, push back the darkness of these creatures. It says he raised his hand, and from it a shaft of white light stabbed upwards. The Nazgul gave a long wailing cry and swerved away. And with that, the 4 others wavered.
Now, that's from his ring, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. It says from his hand.
And in the movie, I think it comes from the staff. But the fact that it comes from his hand made me think that it's probably straight from the ring.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd never noticed that, but I think you're right. I love Pippin's, cheering for Gandalf. He goes, Gandalf, Gandalf. He always turns up when things are darkest. Go on, White Rider. Gandalf, Gandalf, he shouted wildly, like an onlooker at a great race, urging on a runner who is far beyond encouragement. Such a great description.
Yeah, it is great.
I love the description of Gandalf as he always turns up when things are darkest is saying the exact same thing as you are wont to be a bearer of bad news, right? It's like he comes when things are worse. And so people say of him that he only brings bad news, or that bad news comes with him. And it's like, no, when things are worse, Gandalf shows up to help.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. That it's all about your perspective on it, right? I just think it reflects truth about life, which is that hard stuff enters your life, and you can either find the hope that visits you in those moments, or you can dwell on the things that are bad. And one thing is helpful for you, and one thing is really not.
Yeah.
And it's not about kind of some Pollyanna way of looking at the world. It's about sort of spiritual fortitude, I think. And I frankly, it's a message I need, because I'm not, some kind of optimist. But I think if I was a little more, sometimes I would do myself better, rather than like Denethor causing my own moral injury to myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, here's Gandalf, always showing up to say like, no, there is like a way through this. So after they view this white light stabbing upwards and the Nazgul fleeing in the face of it, they enter in through the gate.
There's like this press of people that are welcoming this retreat back in. And I think the description of Gandalf and Faramir is really interesting. It says, they dismounted, and as grooms took Shadowfax and the other horse, they walked forward to the sentinel at the gate. Gandalf steadily, his gray cloak flung back, and the fire still smoldering in his eyes. The other, clad in all green, slowly swaying a little, as a weary or wounded man. And Pippin immediately recognized, he's never met Faramir before, but he immediately recognizes Boromir in his face.
Yeah.
And he recognizes this person has a kindly but lordly manner, and that there's something about him that reminds him more of Aragorn than of Boromir. So immediately there's this contrast between this kind of like Westerness type of personality and this more rash, brash type of personality. And everybody is overcome with pride for Faramir, and they begin to chant his name. And Pippin joins in with the others, and he says, Faramir, Faramir, but his voice is high and childlike. And so Faramir turns and sees him.
Yeah.
And he's like, whence come you?
Yeah.
A halfling in the livery of the tower? Whence? And Gandalf responds, he came with me from the land of the halflings. He came with me. But let us not tarry here. There is much to say and do, and you are weary. Pippin, come along. And so they all go quickly to the hall of Denethor.
Yeah, not the first halfling Faramir has seen in the last few days. So
all these revelations that happen in this section are really interesting. I think we can kind of move quickly through, but Faramir gives a report of his military operation that Denethor had sent him out to do, about the way that they ran into the Haradrim and the fights with the Oliphants, and it all seems pretty routine. There's something really routine about the way he's giving this report.
Yeah.
But then he looks to Pippin and says, but now we come to strange matters, for this is not the first halfling that I have seen walking out of northern legends into the Southlands. And this, of course, is very interesting information to Gandalf.
Yeah, it says that Gandalf's hands were trembling.
When he finds out that they went to Cirith Ungol, to the Morgul Vale, Gandalf stands, and he says, the time, Faramir, the time. When did you part with them? When would they reach that accursed valley? And the reason why he's asking is because he worries that the changing of the weather and the march of the armies is because Frodo has been captured and the ring has been regained by Sauron.
Right.
But Faramir is able to say, it is clear to me the enemy has long planned an assault on us, and its hour had already been determined before ever the travelers left my keeping. Right. So he's saying, like, based on the time that it would take them to get to Cirith Ungol, this can't have been the result of them being captured. This was planned before. And that creates a mystery in Gandalf's mind that he's going to have to solve later, which is like, okay, then why did they march in this moment? And Gandalf is able to deduce, Sherlock Holmes style, that it must be because Aragorn revealed himself in the Palantir, which we know is true.
Yeah, and Aragorn says something in the last chapter about like moving in haste, you know, because somebody says, well, now he'll move even faster. And Aragorn's like, well, that might be a good thing, actually.
Yeah, the swift stroke oft goes astray.
Yeah, that's right. And so, yeah, Aragorn has put that together, and then Gandalf kind of understands Aragorn's mind well enough, I think, to be able to know that like that kind of challenge would have like Sauron would have enough fear of Aragorn or something to move faster than he should.
Exactly.
Which takes his attention away from Mordor, which is good for, Sam and Frodo.
Yeah, and necessary for them to get in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the geography because I was confused as I was reading this, so I wanted to kind of break it down.
Yeah, sure.
The two like geographic locations that are mentioned here that I think are worth kind of just parsing a little bit are Caer Andros and Osgiliath. So Osgiliath, I think we, like anybody who's seen the movies especially, kind of understands that that's this city that is kind of like a disputed territory between Mordor and Gondor. And they're kind of, it switches hands multiple times. But Boromir had fought to regain it before he left for Rivendell. And it's a city that's kind of split by a river. And so you have to cross that river in order to get into the Pelennor. And Caer Andros is in the north of that region, and it's sort of like adjacent to or west of the Black Gate. And it is a small island that's also in the middle of a river. And so it's another like strategic crossing point. And so that is where Faramir has crossed. He's coming from the north south into Minas Tirith, and that's where we see his retreat when the Nazgul are charging at him. And it says that basically after he had let Frodo, Sam, and Gollum go, he had come back to Minas Tirith from the north. And then he had sent the rest of the merry men are in Osgiliath, reinforcing, preparing for that river crossing, that attempted river crossing that's going to happen. So I think that's just he's coming from Caer Andros, and in a few moments, like the next day, he's going to be sent to Osgiliath. So I just wanted to there's like two retreats of Faramir that are mentioned, so I just wanted to distinguish the two because it confused me.
I think it underlines Denethor's lack of ability to like see Faramir, that like Faramir has just escaped death.
Big time.
And then he immediately sends him back out. And also probably some of Faramir's like inferiority. I don't know if it's inferiority complex or what, but like he's really trying to live up to Boromir's memory. And so he's like, yeah, I'll go out, of course, like I'll go out, And he's the leader that Minas Tirith needs.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that everybody like chants his name sort of shows that,
Yeah.
And Baragond is like overwhelmed by how much he loves Faramir.
Yeah, he commands man and beast.
But for him to like escape death and then immediately be sent back out and then escape death again.
Yeah.
And then to be put on a funeral pyre.
Yeah, and burned before he's killed. Well,
yeah, it's just
the chess metaphors whenever we get to Minas Tirith abound. I mean, I think chess has been mentioned probably 5 times in the Minas Tirith chapters. I mean, this is like putting your most valuable piece, like your queen, in harm's way in a really rash move.
Yeah, just repeatedly.
And it's it's just bad tactics.
Right.
But it just shows how Denethor doesn't recognize Faramir's worth. So Faramir relates, how he's gotten to this point. He relates his interactions with Frodo. He talks about how Gollum, he doesn't mention this in the text of the book, but Gandalf and Pippin in a couple of pages will be talking about like, why would he let Gollum, why would Frodo let Gollum? So like he tells them about Gollum as well. So Denethor hears all of this and he's not pleased. He recognizes that, one, he's not been told everything, and he also pieces it all together. He goes, "My son, your father is old, but not yet dotard. I can see and hear, as was my wont, and little of what you have said or left unsaid is now hidden from me. I know the answer to many riddles. Alas, alas for Boromir." So when he says alas for Boromir, he's saying if Boromir was in your place, he would have taken that ring and brought it back to me. Like he recognizes, what Isildur's bane is in this moment.
Right.
He recognizes that Faramir chose to let the ring go into Mordor, and he calls it a folly. He's like, you've sent a hapless halfling with this mighty gift directly into the hands of the enemy.
Yeah.
And it was a folly.
Which I mean, I don't think that Denethor is wrong necessarily, right? Like from his perspective and from, Boromir's perspective, I guess it's like insane what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it is the foolish thing that is going to win out here. And we know that because it's a book and, we know how it kind of ends, but it just, I think that just underlines, Faramir's wisdom, his ability to kind of understand that there's something larger at work that he didn't need to insert himself into.
Yeah, but Faramir still wants to please his father. He says essentially, and I'll just kind of summarize, he says, like, I wish that I'd known your counsel when I had to make these decisions. This was a burden of weighty judgment that was thrust on me. I hope that I didn't displease you. And Denethor mocks him, and he says, ever your desire is to appear lordly and generous as a king of old, gracious and gentle. That may well benefit one of high race if he sits in power and peace. But in desperate hours, gentleness may be repaid with death. And he says, essentially, I wish that Boromir had been in your place, because if he would have been, then he wouldn't have made the decision you made. And this is just one of the saddest exchanges in the entire book. Faramir says, do you wish then that our places had been exchanged? And Denethor says, yes, I wish that indeed. For Boromir was loyal to me and no wizard's pupil. He would have remembered his father's need and would not have squandered what fortune gave. He would have brought me a mighty gift.
Yeah, that's brutal. Faramir and Denethor go back and forth a little bit here.
He's like, hey, dude, like, very respectfully, Faramir's like, hey, remember, you're the one who sent me on this errand.
Yeah, you sent me on the errand, and you sent Boromir on the errand. Like, Faramir really should have been sent to Rivendell in the first place. But he wasn't. He sent Boromir, and then Faramir was sent to Ithilien. And then Denethor says, stir not the bitterness that in the cup that I've mixed for myself.
So he recognizes that he
knows that he screwed up twice. And then Gandalf says, comfort yourself. In no case would have Boromir brought it to you. He is dead, and he died well. May he sleep in peace. Yet you deceive yourself. He would have stretched out his hand to this thing, and taking it, he would have fallen. He would have kept it for his own, because that's how the ring works. It's not a mighty gift.
No,
it's like the embodiment of evil and hatred and fear in a ring. And Boromir would have kept it for himself, and he would have come to Minas Tirith and overthrown the city.
Yeah.
And Denethor wouldn't have been able to stand in his way.
He would have declared himself king.
Exactly.
He would have rallied all the fiefs to himself.
Yeah.
He would have marched on Mordor.
Right.
He would have been defeated immediately.
Right.
The ring would go back to Sauron.
Yeah.
Gondor would be overtaken. Rohan would be overtaken. Lothlorien would be overtaken. Rivendell would be overtaken. The Shire would be overtaken. And he'd be the king of Middle-earth.
Right. Right.
This line here, he would have kept it for his own, and when he returned, you would not have known your son.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Denethor says, in this matter, I have more lore and wisdom than you deem. And Gandalf's like, all right then, like, what's your wisdom? And Denethor responds, enough to perceive that there are two follies to avoid. To use this thing is perilous. At this hour, to send it into the hands of a witless halfling into the land of the enemy itself, as you have done, and the son of mine, that is madness. So he's like, yeah, it's dangerous to use the ring, but it's madness to send it into Mordor.
Yeah.
So he's like, I would choose the less of two follies.
Yeah, I'm so wise that I could use this thing, or I could like keep it in some way.
I'd keep it hidden, dark and deep,
Right.
and not use it unless in like the last need.
Yeah.
But the fact that he thinks in that term, unless in the last need, that's what signals to Gandalf that, no, he's not a trustworthy steward of this.
No, and I mean nobody can be. I think Tolkien on this point is he's not a pragmatist.
Yeah.
No.
Ends never justify the means.
Exactly. Like he sees the thing as evil.
Yeah.
And there's not a way to use it that doesn't corrupt you. No matter how wise you think you are. No matter, I mean, Denethor I think has some wisdom. But that's not what's helpful here. What's really helpful is humility and the ability to say no in the face of, whatever, the devil offering you the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's, I think, the operative image here. It's like, why don't you make these stones into bread? It's like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. Like, you're the devil.
It's like, yeah, yeah, like, bow to me and I'll
give you the world.
I'll
right?
save you from all this trouble that you're about to endure. Like, I'll save you all the pain that you're about to endure. Denethor maintains that he could just keep this thing and not use it. He says, if you do not trust me to endure the test, you do not know me yet. And Gandalf responds, nevertheless, I do not trust you. Had I done so, I could have sent this thing hither to your keeping and spared myself and others much anguish. And now hearing you speak, I trust you less, no more than Boromir. Nay, stay your wrath. I do not trust myself in this, and I refuse this thing, even as a freely given gift.
Yeah, 700 pages ago.
You are strong and can still, in some matters, govern yourself, Denethor. Yet if you had received this thing, it would have overthrown you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, listen, dog. Like, if I thought that you could handle this, like, I could have brought it to you a long, long time ago. Like, I could have saved Frodo all this trouble. He offered it to me, and I could have taken it, and I could have just ridden straight to you.
And given it to you.
Yeah.
And you could have buried it in the dungeons.
Yeah.
But he says, still, it would have burned your mind away. Like, it's that like little thing, the little voice in the back of your head, like, oh, it's down there. I could go use it for anything.
And his use and his like abuse of the Palantir, I think, is
absolutely
proof positive of this.
That's right. Yep.
Like, he is not capable of wielding these powerful tools, and it is causing injury to himself.
Yeah, that's right.
They leave all angry at each other. Faramir is exhausted, and he's like swooning as he's talking, so he sends him off to rest. And Pippin and Gandalf themselves walk out into the night, and it's so dark that they have to carry torches. It's a starless night. And they have this really beautiful exchange where Pippin asks Gandalf, he says, tell me, is there any hope? For Frodo, I mean. Or at least mostly for Frodo. And Gandalf responds, just a fool's hope, as I've been told. So he's like, Denethor just called me a fool for believing this thing, and he's right. But I'd rather be a fool with hope in my heart than a wise person with this thing burning away my mind. And this is where he pieces together that Aragorn has revealed himself in the stone. And he's like, it seems clear that our enemy has opened his war at last and made his first move. I mean, there's the chess metaphor again, while Frodo was still free. So now for many days, he will have his eye turned this way and that, away from his own land. Something has happened to stir him. And that's when he realizes that Aragorn has revealed himself to the enemy and shown himself in the stone and challenged him. And Pippin asks, but the one thing that I still can't like understand is how Gollum plays into all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would Frodo allow Gollum to be their guide? And Gandalf responds, I cannot answer that now. Yet my heart guessed that Frodo and Gollum would meet before the end, for good or for evil. So he hints at this consistently through Fellowship of the Ring,
Yeah.
that Gollum has a part to play, and that the pity of Bilbo might be the salvation of everything. He says, treachery, treachery, I fear, treachery of that miserable creature. But so it must be. Let us remember that a traitor may betray himself and do good that he does not intend. It can be so sometimes. I mean, is that not the thesis of the entire book?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And I love that that psychology there to like, you know, that somebody who's a traitor, something about their nature as a traitor, you know, means that they'll betray themselves. And that maybe anybody who has evil designs is like traitorous in some way to the good. They sow the seeds of the good into the soil, whether they know it or not.
I think there's a whole episode of conversations to be had of a couple things that come up in this chapter. First being characters choosing to defy orders.
Oh yeah.
And that ultimately being a good thing, like Tolkien's like benevolent anarchy kind of coming out.
Yeah, right.
Like, you know, I mean, just, I'm not going to list all, but just in the last chapter, Eowyn refusing to follow Theoden's order.
Yep.
Being a linchpin in the story.
Yeah.
If she had followed Theoden's orders, everything would have fallen apart.
Yeah, right.
There's dozens of examples of that in the book. But the other one is the way that evil undoes itself and the way that treacherous people betray their own allies, whether it's Sauron betraying Sauron or the orcs of Mordor being betrayed by the orcs of Isengard, or Gollum betraying Frodo, and the way in the end that allows the quest to succeed.
Yeah.
That evil sometimes, not to say that it's not evil or that somehow that, you know, the powers of the world desire evil to exist, but even evil can be used as a tool to bring about good.
Yeah. And Tolkien's ethics are always about checking in that moment with like, what's the right thing? Checking in with your conscience, which I think Tolkien would probably render as like checking in with God, right? Like, what's the right thing in this moment? Do I let this guy go in the hall with his staff? Like, he's an old man, you know?
Yeah. Good old Hama.
And so things like that it's up to each individual.
Do we let this dwarf enter Lothlorien?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I let these 3 hunters like go on to like search for their friends, or do I bring them back to my uncle in Meduseld? Like again and again and again and
happens
again.
Again and again. It's not, you're not just like, well, go check the rule book, you know?
Yeah.
Like, no, ask God.
Yeah.
He'll tell you. Yeah.
But the example in this chapter that's coming up is Pippin being like, hey, Beregond's like, you know, a great evil is about to be done.
Yeah.
And Beregond's like, the steward doesn't allow people to leave their post. And Pippin's like, you're about to have to choose between following the rules and letting a good man die.
Yeah. And, you know, the hobbits, it occurs to me, the hobbits don't live in like a rules-based society.
No. Yeah.
Their society is totally free. But the reason it's so free is because they're so connected both to the land,
yeah,
and to each other as neighbors.
Yes.
And everything's not perfect. We talk about that in the very first episode of this project. It's more Edenic because of the way that they live in relationship and community with each other.
It's closer. Yeah.
And so for Pippin, I mean, says he feels like he's not a hobbit.
Yeah.
Sorry. He says he feels like he's not a hobbit, but in that moment with Beregond, he's like reminding Beregond that like you can be a human being here, you know?
Yeah.
You're not just a person at a post. You're a person who has a choice.
Ooh. Well said.
And that saves, Faramir's life.
They wake up the next day, and major decisions have to be made about the war. It's not untrue to say that Osgiliath needs to be defended, but it's going to come at a great cost. But Denethor makes the decision that he can't yield the entrance from the river to the Pelennor in Osgiliath without a challenge. And he goads Faramir by saying, "Is there a captain here who has the courage to do his lord's will?" And Faramir says, "I do not oppose your will, sire. Since you are robbed of Boromir, I will go and do what I can in his stead, if you command it."
Could Denethor send anybody else?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if he could. I mean, I think it's crazy to send your son when you've already lost a son. But I also think
it's Denethor's pride. He's like, I'm willing to spend even my own sons.
Yeah, but not himself, right?
Unless by his own hand.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
If Aragorn was here, who would Aragorn send?
I don't know.
He'd go himself.
Well, right. Yeah, he would go himself. That's true.
Like, we know that Denethor's like got chainmail underneath his, robes here. He's got a sword at his side.
Yeah.
He talks about how he sleeps in it.
He's wearing it for exercise. That's what he says. So that he doesn't become
soft.
Too weak and soft. But
he's not like Theoden. He's not leaning on his stick. But guess what? He's about to be leaning on his stick here in a minute.
Yeah, that's true.
Gandalf, before Faramir leaves, he says, "Do not throw your life away rashly or in bitterness. You will be needed here. Your father loves you, Faramir, and will remember it ere the end. Farewell." I mean, for all the rash words that Gandalf has thrown at Denethor to say, your father loves you.
Yeah.
That's a charitable interpretation of Denethor.
It sure is.
It's wiser than Denethor is. Denethor is like, yeah, I do wish you were dead.
Right.
And Gandalf sees that that's not true. So Faramir leaves with as much men as he's able to muster. They go to the ruined city and they make a stand. And the stand happens off the page. But that night, news comes. It says, a man rode in haste from the fords, saying that a host had issued from Minas Morgul and was already drawing nigh to Osgiliath, and it had been joined by regiments from the south, Haradrim, Cruel, and Tall. And they learned that the Black Captain himself, the Lord of the Nazgul, is leading them. And the hosts of Mordor swarm across the river like beetles. And the Black Captain goes before them. And they're defeated not just by the strength of this force, but also by the fear that the Nazgul bring.
Yeah.
These forces overtake Osgiliath and they begin to blast their way through the wall of the Pelennor. And the men start coming in dribs and drabs, retreating, coming into the city. But Faramir is not among them. As the men start retreating and coming into the city, Gandalf recognizes that he is needed outside of the city walls. He says, I am needed there more than here. And Gandalf rode off at once, and the glimmer of him faded soon from sight. And all that night Pippin alone and sleepless stood upon the wall and gazed eastward. So Gandalf goes and joins this retreating defense of the Pelennor. And the next morning we find out that the wall of the Pelennor, which we saw Gandalf and Pippin ride through at the beginning of the Minas Tirith chapter, that has fallen to the enemy. And it's Beregond who asks, where's Faramir? Say that he has not fallen.
So we hear a little bit from Gandalf about, it says, Gandalf brought the first tidings of kind of what's been going on.
Yeah, so Gandalf returns from this, riding.
He returns from this, sortie out into the fields, and
let's just mark this is the second time that Gandalf has rode out from the safety of the city to the front lines now.
So Gandalf comes back from his sortie. It's asked, is Faramir come? And Gandalf says, no, but he still lived when I left him. And Faramir has stayed behind to kind of help the retreat, to make sure that the retreat doesn't become a rout. Gandalf says he might hold his men together long enough, but I doubt it. One has come that I have feared. And, Pippin says, not the Dark Lord. And
Denethor mocks him. He laughs.
yeah, Denethor just mocks everybody around him at this point because he's so much wiser than everybody else. Nay, not yet, Master Peregrine. He won't come save only to triumph over me when all is won. It's all about Denethor's.
He uses others as his weapons. So do all great lords if they are wise, Master Halfling.
Which is how Denethor thinks of himself, right?
Yeah, he's like, I spend my own sons.
Or why should I sit here in my tower and think and watch and wait, spending even my sons for... I could still wield a brand, and then this is actually where we get the thing about the mail cloak that he wears under his robes or whatever. So we find out that the Black Captain is the Witch King, the Ring Wraith, Lord of the Nazgul.
Sorcerer, a spear of terror in the hand of Sauron, shadow of despair.
And he kind of mocks Gandalf. Oh, now you have a foe to match you.
Yeah, he's like, oh, you scared?
Gandalf's answer here is just a softly answer. Maybe, but our trial of strength has not yet come. And if words spoken of old be true, not by the hand of man shall he fall.
And hidden from the wise is the doom that awaits him.
Yeah. The Captain of Despair. Gandalf calls him with a capital C and a capital D.
Yeah.
Which is pretty epic. The Captain of Despair.
But he's like, yeah, that Lord of the Nazgul, Denethor, he rules like you. Like, he's wise in the same way you're wise.
Yeah, right.
He rules rather according to the wisdom that you have just spoken from the rear, driving his slaves in madness.
I love what Gandalf says about himself here. I came rather to guard the hurt men that can yet be healed.
Yeah.
And that focus on healing becomes kind of the most important part of Aragorn's claim to be the king.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting that there are still men here, even though they've retreated, it doesn't mean that they're worthless.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Denethor kind of thinks everybody should have died on the walls or whatever.
Yeah. But Gandalf tells him, a sortie needs to be prepared because this island that we mentioned before, Car Andros, where Faramir came from before, has already fallen, and the fugitives from that, like the people who are retreating, are already coming into the city. And this is where Denethor says, some have accused you, Mithrandir, of delighting to bear ill news. But to me, this is no longer news. It was known to me ere nightfall yesterday. As for the sortie, I had already given thought to it. Let us go down. So he's like, yeah, Gandalf, like, I know. I already know everything that there's no wisdom that you can bring me. There's, an inability for him to recognize what a benefit Gandalf is. And that's a real flaw in his character.
Yeah, it is.
Time passes. The men are able to see that there's, kind of this final retreat. Faramir has held back, but the kind of the last stand are themselves fleeing back to the city. This is where we get a second time people watching and recognizing that it must be Faramir, because they say he can govern man and beast. The Nazgul again come and chase after this retreat. And then there's a really short sentence that Tolkien gives. It says, the retreat became a rout.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and who's at the forefront of this sortie?
The Prince of Dol Amroth. Is that right?
Imrahil, baby. Yeah, he's about to be a pretty important player.
Yeah.
I wish Imrahil was given as much page time as Baragond.
Yeah,
Imrahil's kind of sick.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Says, like thunder they broke upon the enemy on either flank of the retreat, but one rider outran them all, swift as the wind in the grass. Shadowfax bore him, shining, unveiled once more, a light starting up from his upraised hand. So they're just saying it's from his upraised hand again.
There it is again, yeah.
So now this is the third time that Gandalf has left the walls of the city,
right,
and been at the front of the battle against the Nazgul.
Yeah.
What a comparison to Denethor.
And Theoden in the last chapter, who knows
Exactly.
he knows he's gonna die.
I'm not going to hang out in the hills.
No.
I'm not going to send other men to die for me.
Yeah.
The men do retreat, and they come back, and Faramir is brought by the Prince of Dol Amroth, and he carries him in his arms before him on his horse. Denethor sees that his son has been what he thinks mortally wounded.
Yeah.
And he retreats to a secret room in the summit of the tower. And it says, many who looked up thither at this time saw a pale light that gleamed and flickered from the narrow windows for a while, and then flashed and went out. And when he descends, his face was gray and more deathlike than his son's.
It's so strange that like that's his instinct in the moment, is to go look at the Palantir.
Yeah.
Rather than like attend to his son. He's like, oh, I better go check the Palantir. I gotta go like look at my phone for a few minutes before I can like, deal with the fact that this is happening.
Better go watch some bad news.
Yeah, right. Watch some bad news and feel even worse about what's just happened. Really strange behavior. All right. So now at last the city was besieged.
They closed the gates. So basically everybody who's there for the fight is back. All the refugees from the north, all the people who were defending Osgiliath who have survived. Faramir was really the last back through the gate before it's shut. The evil of the orcs and these men who are under Sauron's forces, they're hewing the living and the dead. They're disrespecting their dead bodies. They dig lines of deep trenches in a huge ring, and they continue to labor, pulling these great engines of war that can cast missiles. They're pulled by the Oliphants, and they're keeping themselves like just out of bowshot of the city walls, but they're setting up for a siege. Their gates are strong, their walls are strong, and so they think that they are unbreakable unless the enemy has a way to like cause an earthquake, a convulsion that would rend the very earth on which it stood. But the wise among them say that the enemy has a weapon that has brought low many strong places since the world began. And that weapon is hunger. Because the roads are cut in, they can't receive any supplies. And there's this like just defeated attitude they all have. Their hope has waned so much that they are just convinced that Rohan won't come.
Yeah, Rohan will not come. It becomes kind of like a refrain.
Yeah, they're just convinced of it.
But that's when we get this detail that not only are they flinging fire into the city, they're also flinging the heads of the men who had fallen fighting at Osgiliath, and the heads are branded with the foul token of the lidless eye.
Yeah.
Every now and then they see somebody they know.
Yeah.
And in vain, it says, in vain men shook their fists at the pitiless foes that swarmed before the gate.
Yeah.
And this is when it says, the Lord of the Dark Tower had another weapon swifter than hunger, dread, and despair.
Yeah.
This is not really how a siege works. But Sauron, has a pretty high opinion of himself, first of all. He's got an air force, second of all, which is pretty different than most siege warfare.
Yeah.
And he's freaked out by Aragorn, which Gandalf reminded of us earlier.
Yeah, so he's willing to spend like an incredible amount of his forces.
Yeah, and he's got orcs, which are more like ants, and which are like enslaved to him.
Yeah.
And so he's just going to throw everything he has at the city.
Yeah. Well, and wait, this just occurred to me. He assumes that Aragorn has the ring.
Oh yeah,
and he assumes that Aragorn is behind these walls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
And so this is his chance. He's like, yeah, I could lose half my forces as long as I get the ring. Like that's a price he's willing to pay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Denethor is up in the tower while all this is happening. The city is beginning to burn. The hope of the people is completely lost. And Pippin tries to console him. He says, do not weep, Lord. Perhaps Faramir will get well. Have you asked Gandalf? That's probably the worst thing that you can ask Denethor at this point, because that just enrages him. He says, comfort me not with wizards. The fool's hope has failed. The enemy has found it, and now his power waxes. He sees our very thoughts, and all we do is ruin us. So he's convinced himself that the Dark Lord has the ring. Men come crying to the Lord of the city, begging him to lead, begging him to come down to command the forces. But he says, nay, I will not come down. I must stay beside my son. He might still speak before the end, but that is near. Follow whom you will, even the gray fool, though his hope has failed. Here I stay. And so that's the moment that Gandalf really becomes the general of these forces.
Yeah, he takes command.
The forces just continue to cross this river, and they just continue to fill this field of Pelennor. And it says, then perceiving that the valor of the city had already been beaten down, the hidden captain put forth his strength. So that's the Nazgul, the king of the ring wraiths. Slowly the great siege towers built in Osgiliath rolled forward through the dark. And again, people start to come to Denethor and just beg him to come out, because they're like, not everybody will follow Gandalf because they want you to lead them. He says, why? Why did the fools fly? It says that men are flying from the walls and leaving the walls unmanned. And Denethor says, why? Why did the fools fly? Better to burn sooner than late, for burn we must. Go back to your bonfire. So he's fully seated. Like, now it's not his city. It's your city. It's like, the city is burning. Go back to it, because we're all going to burn. So we might as well burn now. He goes, no tomb for Denethor and Faramir. No tomb. No long sleep of death embalmed. We will burn like heathen kings before ever a ship sailed hither from the west. The west has failed. Go back and burn.
And he relates that to, Faramir's got like some kind of infection, right? He's got a fever. And so he's already burning, he said sadly. And then he tells Pippin, why don't you go and die too? I release you from my service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go now and die in the way that seems best to you. Send for my servants and then go. Farewell. I love how Pippin stands up to Denethor here. He says, I will take your leave, sir, for I want to see Gandalf very much indeed. But he is no fool, and I will not think of dying until he despairs of life.
Yeah.
But from my word in your service, I do wish to be released while you live. And if they come at last to the citadel, I hope to be here and stand beside you and earn perhaps the arms that you have given me. What a guy.
Yeah, Pippin's such a noble character here.
So Denethor, with his servants, they walk down to these tombs of the kings and the stewards. And it says that he's bending on a staff, which I think is just so poetic, because he is just like bragged
how strong he is.
Yeah, that he's not bent of body. He's not soft and timid. They walk out past the white tree as if it's a funeral. And as the city burns before them, they lay down on a
table?
Like a table of stone. It says, upon it, at a sign from Denethor, they laid Faramir and his father side by side and covered them with one covering, and stood then with bowed heads as mourners beside a bed of death. And Denethor says, don't send for the embalmers. Instead, put down wood quick to burn and lay it about us and pour oil upon it. And when I bid you thrust in your torch, do this and speak no more to me. And Pippin says, it's more likely that he needs medicine more than tears.
Mm-hmm.
He says, by your leave, Lord, and he runs off to go find Gandalf. And he meets
one of the servants.
Yeah. And he, begs him to save Faramir. He goes, bring no fire to this place while Faramir lives. Do nothing until Gandalf comes. And in comparison to, all these noble men who defy orders, this servant says, who's the master of Minas Tirith? The Lord Denethor or the Grey Wanderer?
Yeah.
And that's when Pippin sees Baragond. And he tells Baragond that they've gone to the Silent Street, to this place of burial. And Baragond assumes that Faramir has died. But Pippin says, no, not yet. And even now his death might be prevented, I think. But the lord of the city, Baragond, has fallen before his city is taken. He is fey and dangerous. He says, Baragond, if you can, do something to stop any dreadful thing from happening. And Baragon says, "The Lord does not permit those who wear the black and silver to leave their post for any cause, save at his own command." And Pippin says, "Well, you must choose between orders in the life of Faramir. And as for orders, I think that you have a madman to deal with, not a lord. I must run. I will return if I can." And so Pippin runs off to go and try and find Gandalf.
But of course, when he finds Gandalf, it's
at the gate. And this gate is strong. You know, it's made by the Númenóreans. It's like stone and steel, and it seems impenetrable, but it's still the weakest point. And so that's where the Lord of the Nazgul brings this battering ram called Grond.
Yeah, Grond, they named it in memory of the hammer of the underworld of old.
So you want to talk about Grond a little bit? Let's look at the description of Grond, this battering ram.
Yeah.
It says that it is 100 feet in length. So imagine how heavy this thing is. It swings on mighty chains. Long had it been forging in the dark smithies of Mordor, and its hideous head, founded of black steel, was shaped in the likeness of a ravening wolf. On it spells of ruin lay. And it says, Grond, they named it in memory of the hammer of the underworld of old. So this is named after the weapon of Morgoth, which is a huge club. And Morgoth himself wielded it in the First Age against the wars with the elves. You know, they move this huge battering ram up to the gate to knock it in, and they're just like rolling over the bodies of orcs as they do it because there's so much carnage at the gate.
Mm-hmm.
It says, all before the walls on either side of the gate, the ground was choked with wreck and with bodies of the slain, yet still driven as by a madness more and more came up. So the forces are just like getting behind this hammer. And twice Tolkien uses this 3-word sentence, you know, in this chapter that's full of these long, you know, strung together sentences. Grond crawled on. Twice he says that. He says the drums rolled wildly. Over the hills of slain and hideous shapes appeared a horseman, tall, hooded, cloaked in black. Slowly, trampling the fallen, he rode forth, heeding no longer any dart. He halted and held up a long pale sword. And as he did so, a great fear fell on all, defender and foe alike. And the hands of men drooped to their sides, and no bow sang. For a moment, all was still.
Yeah, all they could do is watch, and then Grond is hurled forward.
A deep boom rumbled through the city like thunder, running in the clouds, but the doors of iron and posts of steel withstood the stroke. But then the Witch King, the Black Captain, cries aloud in a dreadful voice that no one understands because it's from a forgotten tongue. Words of power and terror to rend both heart and stone. Thrice he cries, thrice the great ram boomed, and suddenly upon the last stroke the gate of Gondor broke. Here's another short, these short sentences all in a row. In rode the Lord of the Nazgul, and he stands in the archway that no enemy has ever passed, and all flees before his face. Another 3-word sentence. All save one. And who is it, Logan?
G for grand.
Old Gandalf.
Yeah. And Shadowfax, of course. I like this. Shadowfax, who alone among the free horses of the earth endured the terror. Unmoving, steadfast as a graven image in Rathdennen.
So that's so interesting that it says steadfast as a graven image in Rathdennen, because that's where Denethor has brought Faramir. So he's like, you know, all these statues of these dead men who... Do you remember when Faramir said that the reason why Gondor's waning is because they care more about the lists of like dead relatives than they do about the lives of their sons?
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting contrast. It's like, yeah, he's just as still and steadfast as these carven images and this, you know, hall of the dead. but he's alive and he's standing here facing down evil. Such an interesting contrast between Denethor and Gandalf. Gandalf stands in front of the Witch King of Angmar, this foe that he hasn't been tested against, this foe that he fears. And you and I both, like right before we started recording, pointed out that what he says to the Witch King is so similar to what he says to the Balrog.
Yeah, he says, "You cannot enter here," which reminds you of "you cannot pass."
Yeah.
And when he says that, the huge shadow halted, and Gandalf says, "Go back to the abyss prepared for you. Go back, fall into the nothingness that awaits you and your master. Go." And the details we get here about the Black Rider are really interesting, and I think this is as much description as we get as of one of them, Nazgul.
Yeah.
Because when the Black Rider takes his hood off, we see a crown, but there's no head.
Yeah.
But there is some kind of like red fire that shines between the crown, like within the crown.
Like between the crown and the, like where his shoulders would be.
Yeah. And there's no mouth, but we can hear a deadly laughter. "Old fool," he said, "old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it? Die now and curse in vain." And then when he lifts the same pale sword, now it has flames on the blade. But Gandalf doesn't move. And then away in the courtyard in the city, a cock crowed, recking nothing of wizardry or war, welcoming only the morning.
There's something so beautiful about that.
Yeah.
Something very biblical about it as well.
Oh, yeah, totally.
A symbol of Christ is often the cock crowing, the hope that morning will come even in the midst of darkness. And this like simple creature who doesn't understand and can't comprehend the evil that's falling upon the city, all it knows is that the morning is coming, and it announces it just like it would any other day.
Right.
But as that shrill note echoes across the city, an answer that comes from far away, another note. Horns, horns, horns. Great horns of the north wildly blowing. Rohan had come at last.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. It's good stuff.
What a contrast between last chapter and this. And
Yeah.
now we're about to have another break in the action.
Of the Rohirrim.
Because we're going to go back and like figure out how the Rohirrim got here.
It's a really short chapter. The next chapter is only 10 pages, 11 pages long.
Yeah, so like a third as long as this chapter.
But after that, we get the Battle of Pelennor Fields, which is one of the great chapters in literature.
Ever. Can't wait. It's going to be great.
Exciting.
Thanks so much for reading along with us this week. Hope that you'll join us next week for Book 5, Chapter 5, The Ride of the Rohirrim. If you want to help out the podcast, be sure and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a rating and a review. Subscribe on Spotify. Follow us on YouTube. And if you want more info, you can go to waywardwizards.com or email us at info@waywardwizards.com.
And until next week, remember, there never was much hope, just a fool's hope. See you next week.
Bye-bye.